goal of today's meeting is by the end of this meeting, teachers will be able to create a proficiency exam test for quarter 2, addressing major standards within quarter 2, using the appropriate resources aligned to high quality instructional material to support student academic growth towards mastery, so that we can get to where we're trying to get to for our 10%. So again, we start all of our meetings with our norms and roles. Our norms: be on time, come prepared, respect all voices, and stay focused. Your team roles for today: Ms. Jennifer, you will be our timekeeper. Ms. Snow, you will be our reporter. Ms. Smith, you will be our focus monitor. And our engaged participants, Ms. Wilcox and Ms. Williams. So we're going to start today's meeting by looking at our student work that you were told to bring back for this meeting from our last meeting. And again, we're working on our action plan, and this is one of our action plan steps that we can make sure that we are getting our students ready for quarter 2 exam, and then that connection of our multiple choice items, and then also connecting it to multiple select, and also connecting it to our constructive response items. So Ms. Smith, you want to start with your high students?
Yes. So the task that I brought back today is we had been discussing, based on proficiency exam 1, we noticed that students were demonstrating their understanding of standards in those multiple choice, multi-select items, but really struggling to transfer that knowledge into written expression on constructed response items. So we've been really working to make sure that anytime we're using some sort of graphic organizer like the primary source analysis document, that we're also attaching a short writing to that to see that they can transfer their understanding. So the high student work that I brought from Molly, she, you can see in the primary source analysis document that she really was able to successfully identify information within the source, both explicitly and inferentially, to that analysis document. And then in her writing, we're able to see, if you scroll up just a little bit, or down, I'm sorry, that she does have her claim. She answers that no, Sitting Bull did not trust General Terry or the U.S. government, so she has that strong claim, but she does support that claim. So we're getting that social studies skills and practice standard 3.4, where they have to support their claim with information from a primary source, because she tells us that they broke many treaties, and that Chief Sitting Bull said that someone who does not lie is someone who he will listen to. That's pulled directly from the document, and you can see the connection to the information she pulled on the primary source analysis document transferring directly back into her writing.
Okay, so I see that she has been in the mid area, and now she's in the mastery level. So what are you doing differently with her to get her there?
So based on Molly's goals that we set in her student tracker, and I know we don't have historical data per se for 3rd grade, but based on what we knew from her 2nd grade diagnostic data, we had set her with a goal of advanced. And like you said, she's not been performing there. And so the thing that I think made the biggest impact for Molly was that at the beginning of the year, we had a lot of those goal setting conversations, but honestly for me, they just kind of fell off. Like, it became something we just stopped going back to. And so because of that, I tried to bring those goal setting conversations back around to remind Molly that her goal is to be advanced and make that connection to her work. So if your goal's advanced, I need your work to show that you're progressing toward that advanced level. And so those conversations, bringing those back, really motivated Molly, and we can absolutely see the impact of that on her work.
Okay, let's go to your medium.
Okay. So my medium work that I brought from Drew. So you can definitely see he did not pull as much information from the primary source, but the information that he did pull is correct. And he even was able to get some of that inferential information. We're down on the bottom left, like you can see, he understood that Chief Sitting Bull was mad, and also was not prepared to listen anymore to the U.S. government. So So even though it's not as much information, it is correct, and it does transfer directly into his writing that he did not trust, so he has that correct claim that's there, and he is supporting it with evidence from the primary source.
So what's your goal in the video?
So his goal is basic.
Okay, so with his goal being basic and the work that he's submitting, is he on the lower end or the higher end, and how do you think he can progress in that?
So he is at, his goal is around the lower end of basic, and I know we've kind of talked previously about whether or not he could potentially be seen as mastery, and we're still kind of having that conversation. I know even the ELA teacher and I have been talking a lot about the characteristics of his work because we are seeing some similarities, and so the ELA teacher I know is working with him a lot on expanding his sentences to add more detail because he does have the correct knowledge. And so we're gonna work together to continue doing that in social studies as well, because he does have the knowledge, it's just not fully transferring, so we're gonna work on that together.
Okay, that's good. Let's look at your low school.
Alright, so my low student work is coming from CAN, and what I originally thought, so previously CAN had not been putting anything on his primary source analysis or in his writing. We had just gotten a lot of blank evidence. So I did want to bring his work because there is something there now. And I originally thought, okay, he is understanding that the primary source is coming from Chief Sitting Bull, and he does understand that Chief Sitting Bull is a Native American, which connects back to that standard 3.6 that asks them to identify and describe historical figures. But then I started wondering, because he copied it again down at the bottom, Sitting Bull, Native Americans, I started wondering, does he really understand that, or was he just copying words? And then he wrote exactly what he put on the primary source analysis for his writing. So this is gonna require a little bit of a more, like a conference with CAN to really understand what knowledge he did take away, or if he was just copying.
Since he's sped or probably more.
He is not, but based on his performance across quarter one, the third grade team and I have referred him to SDLC, and we're doing small group and one-on-one interventions with him.
And Ms. Jennifer, let's look at your high student.
Okay, so we've been working on 5.2A and 5.13C. 5.2A states that students will be able to analyze social studies content, identify facts and opinions, and 5.13C states that students will be able to describe existence of diverse networks of indigenous North American cultures, including various language, customs, and economic and political structures. So the writing prompt that my students had was, according to the Great Law of Peace, what benefits did the nations get from alliances? The Great Law of Peace is a constitutional document from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and it was an alliance between the 6 indigenous nations. It was established to promote peace, unity, and collective decision-making amongst the nations. So for my high, I chose Nevaeh's writing, and the reason why was because she was able to use the excerpt to draw a conclusion based on information that was evidence-based and provided good reasoning. She actually put, according to the Great Law of Peace, member nations got benefits working together to solve problems, share resources, and live in peace. And instead of fighting, they could also make decisions as a group, which helped them stay united and strong. So I think she did a really, really good job, using the Haudenosaunee Confederacy document to write her writing.
So what's her goal on the video?
Nevaeh was a master.
So, what are you trying to do to probably try to get her to the advanced level? Was she like high master?
She had a 755, so I'm actually trying to push her into that advanced level. So I meet with my students that range between a 755 to a 765, I meet with them twice a week. And, you know, make sure that I'm giving them like additional to, and making sure that their writing is getting stronger, because that's what they need.
So I know, Truly is one of our students that we've been watching on the TrulyR forum in your class, so let's talk about Truly's work.
Okay, so when it came to Truly's work, the reason why I brought his work in is because he was able to draw a conclusion. However, it was missing some essential pieces from the Hassani document. For example, he forgot things like making decisions together and being united. He focused strictly on the member nations got any benefits from the alliance. They work together to solve problems and not fight against each other. I felt like that could have been stronger. And based on where he was on the leap last year, he made a basic. He had a 731. I'm trying to get the math since it was so close.
So, what are some supports or suggestions that we can give to Ms. Schindler to help her in with Truly? Because we know that she's a new teacher, so we want to make sure that we help and give her all the support that she needs for her to be able to reach that goal of trying to get him to the next level like she's trying to.
Well, I know one of the things that Ms. Scherer and I have been talking about is we've been kind of co-planning and working together is, at this point in the year, kind of making sure we're coming back on the model a little bit. We're not over modeling. And we had actually talked about that with Truly, that Truly is one that's gonna wait and see how much you're gonna give. And then he was like that in third grade too, so it's stayed the same. But, so one of the things I know we're gonna do for Truly and for the others is, not over model at this point. The primary source analysis is something that they've been doing for years and they've used it multiple times. So just kind of giving them that primary source and letting them see what they pull from it, so that we're not so dependent upon the teacher model. We're getting more of the students' ideas.
So let's look at your low student.
Okay, for my law, I brought in Jalen's work on the class work. He showed where he was able to identify some information about the lesson. When I looked at his, his graphic organizer, he was able to identify that the Haudenosaunee Confederacy document was actually written on animal skin. So, I was very proud of him for putting that. He also tried to replicate some of the symbols that he's seen on the document, so I was very proud of him for doing that as well. But when it came to his writing, I think he was having a bad day that day, because his writing was just based on the computer screen and on the keys, and I'm thinking, come on now, we making some progress here. So, and since he's, one of the ones that we're tracking, I felt like I needed to bring this in, because I need some help with that.
Based on having to audio record his answer to see if he knows the content. If it's not, he just can't put it in writing. Having to record it and asking questions and having to do it that way. And then that way you know if it's the content he don't know, or if it's just he can't write it, put his thoughts into words and write it on paper.
Yes. Thank you. Now, I know, Chaz is also one that we're tracking, and I brought in his work because he is one that we're tracking, and I didn't really know how to score this one. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Chad did, you can tell in his writing, even though it's not a lot, that he understood the Haudenosaunee Confederacy Constitution, because he put in the 5 nations, he put 6, but he put in the 5 nations got protection and strength by working together, so he was able to grasp that. And when I looked at the graphic organizer, it had all the parts that was needed, so I could tell that he understood it, but he just didn't, put it on there. And he scored a mastery last year, so, I'm a little scared. I don't know how to grade it, and I don't want him to fall back when I know he's one of our strong ones.
Team, do you have any suggestions, looking at the rubric on how she should be scoring the specific student? Because again, all of
writing is correct, it's not as developed as you may
It's
want it to
very
be at fifth grade.
Yes.
I wonder if we don't, I don't know, Miss Snow, if you're seeing this in fourth grade too. I know we've modeled the primary source analysis document and we've modeled how to write, but I don't know, like, I know I haven't modeled how explicitly to transfer from the primary source analysis document to the writing.
And I think that's been an issue, they're seeing it as two separate pieces of work instead of you connecting them together, and like, your writing is right there, all you have to do now is just transfer it
What
over.
about having a
And they're
middle
not
piece
seeing
where you
that.
bullet it? Take
Yeah.
information from the source and you bullet it, and then it's a lot easier to put into your writing, because they're not gonna grade the brainstorm, and they're gonna grade so you can bullet it in between and then transfer.
And I forget too that on constructed responses, they are able to bullet, right? Correct, Mr.
So the
Dixon?
things they
So
are.
like, for our students that are struggling to write a full developed paragraph, that bulleting may support them.
And see, I think, Chaz is new that, cause it's like
Yeah.
whenever it
Yeah.
comes to writing, he just don't, but he's always on point, it's just
Yeah.
vague, his wording. Okay, well, thank you.
Ms. Snow, let's look at your high school.
Okay, so we've been studying ancient China, and we've been using this graphic organizer to report the characteristics of a civilization, so, which is 4.12. And so Miguel, you can see that he understands the different characteristics, and so if you scroll up a little bit, you'll see the writing prompt. And so our writing prompt was, why were mulberry trees important in early China? So he definitely understands the importance of the trees. What we're looking for is it was because of the silkworms, and then the silkworms would eat the leaves, build their cocoons, and then the Chinese would take that silk thread from the cocoons and then turn it into silk, and then they could make silk, then they could trade the silk to other regions. So when we look at his writing, he does really well. He kind of sometimes gets off a little bit, because his conclusion, if you look at it, it shows that, this shows that the silk was an important part of China because they could use silk to get other stuff they needed, which is true, but he should have concluded it back to, this shows why the trees were important. And so that's a really easy fix for him. I'm not concerned at all with that, because he's really high. On the QDR, his goal is a high mastery, but he knows the content so well, and he does really well on all the multiple choice that I think I can get him to advance just by working a little harder, pushing that writing a little bit more.
Let's talk about your medium.
Okay, so my medium is Malachi, and he's got some things on the graphic organizer correct. He does have belief systems, he has believe in yourself, which really that's not, that doesn't go with that. But if we look at his writing piece, he knew why the trees were important, because he has the silkworms and that they eat the leaves and build cocoons and make silk, which they do. And he has that China sold the silk, which China didn't sell the silk, they traded it. So he's right there. He just needs to add just a little bit more with like a reasoning piece to connect back to why those trees were important, which again, I think that's another easy fix to do there. He just needs to use more information from the book. So his goal is a high basic, and I really, really want him to get a mastery, so I'm confident that I can get him there if we just work on that writing piece, because again, he does very well with the content and the multiple choice.
Yeah, so I think with you having that affirmative action plan, is him working on that reasoning, I think that you can really get him that level that you're trying to get him to. That's because he's already a high basic. So let's talk about your low school.
My friend. So if we look at his graphic organizer, it's kind of scary, like he puts, for government, he puts president. And I think that with everything that has been happening with the election and all of that, he just connected that if it's government, there's a president. For technology, we had a discussion one day about the weapons they use. So I think he hears bits and pieces of the discussion going on in class. And so he just wrote guns, because guns are a weapon. Well, they didn't have guns. Again, with religion, Jesus. So he hears different pieces and just throws something on there. He hates to read, so I know, I mean, I have to really get on him about reading the sources and looking at the sources because he hates that. So when we look at his writing, so why were the trees important? He has because people need shade when it's hot out. I sit under trees to cool off when it's hot out, so that's what the people did when they got sweaty. So, I mean, again,
He's making connections to his
he's
life
making connections.
throughout
That's exactly what he's doing. And so, I don't know, I'm really struggling with him. I don't know if I need to pull him into a small group and sit and talk with him. Because, like, he obviously understands, like, civilization, government, president. It's just, he's not connecting to ancient China, he's connecting to his world now. And his goal on the QDR is an UNSAT, and he consistently performs at that level, week after week.
So, do you have any suggestions for this, this area? Like right now, you're saying that one of the suggestions that you have for yourself is to pull him to the side and work individually with him so you can actually determine what his actual issue is. Maybe you want to start there, or unless someone else actually has some other suggestions that they would like to.
Which you can
Oh,
also
okay.
use,
Okay,
for.
so you two have already talked about.
We
talked about
talked- yeah,
this
we
student,
already
your
talked
next
about-
student.
yeah.
Okay, let's talk about your next student,
So-
and then we can narrow it down.
The next one I brought is Liliana. She's my sped student that we've been tracking, and she's kind of like a meme girl, I guess. So if you see, she has some of it there, but one thing is if she doesn't know, she'll just put IDK. She's still doing that IDK, and she just doesn't want to even attempt to find it out. But if we look at her writing, so she has because of the silkworms. I mean, she knew why the trees were important, but she just stopped right there. She didn't go into any further detail. And I know in ELA, her writing it's improved so much, but she's not transferring that over into any other subject.
And I think the reason why that is, like, in working with Liliana, I'm noticing that it takes a lot longer than most kids in order to grasp content and concepts, I'm sorry, and stuff, but, I've noticed that with working with her, that what works best for her is if you give her something that's relatable, that she can experience like with the other kid who related it, but give them those first to get them used to, making that connection, and then go back and reread the passage to them, and have them to, you give them some guided questioning to lead them into, finding the correct answer that you want them to write about, and then giving them a writing organizer where they can put their ideas in a structured way. That will help them to make a better response as to why the mulberry tree, was important in China.
Okay.
When you say her English scores are going up, her English writing is getting better, there's not an exact translation between English and social studies
Right.
either. So when that's going up and social studies is not, you can tell it's a content issue.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm wondering too, because this is something I kind of see in my, like, especially with my struggling readers and the ones that don't want to go back, but I'm thinking too about if we approach the text in shorter chunks, because a lot of times we can approach our social studies text like a reference document. It doesn't have to be read from beginning to end in the way a narrative does, that we can go back and just look for the specific information, like Ms. Wilcox was saying. I can go just look for the mulberry trees and why they're important.
Okay, so let's implement these suggestions, and then I would like you to make sure we bring back those two students' work for next week, so we can see if there's any progression, change in their work. Just so that, and then we probably have to do it a couple of weeks just to actually see if it's actually working, because we all know that 1 week is not gonna be enough. So just to, include those two for the next couple of weeks,
Okay.
along with whatever you're bringing in for high, mid, and low, just so we can track, especially with Walter and him being consistently at that onset. And is it low onset or high onset, is it like the same thing every time?
He's kind of mid. He's low to mid.
So let's look, let's track him a little bit more so we can see exactly what the issue is, so we can try to get him moved a little bit. Because even if we don't get him moved to the next achievement level, we wanna make sure we get growth from him so that we're able to see that difference as well. then by the end of this TCM, teachers will create proficiency exams 2 by choosing appropriate test items using the proficiency exam guidance document resulting in an assessment that is aligned to the learning expectations of quarter 2. So we're going to be creating our proficiency exam 2 today. And as a reminder from our data analysis, after proficiency exam 1, we reviewed that data and it showed us that our 3rd through 5th grade students are struggling with written response across all 4 subjects, with most of you, not most of y'all, we talked about today in your student work as it pertains to your action plan that we created at the end of proficiency exam 1, and that you've been following weekly to help prepare your students for proficiency exam 2. So the social studies action plan was to expose students to more constructive response items using our high quality instructional materials. And one of the steps of your plan was the connection of the items to the multiple choice items, and then connecting that to multiple collect and our constructive response, which also showed in all of the student work that you all brought in today that we are following a step of that action plan. Another step that we are also focusing on with social studies is tracking that progress of our high, medium, and low students each week in our TCMs and adjusting that instruction accordingly based on how our students are progressing on our action steps and through the social study 5-year bridges curriculum. So again, we will be creating our proficiency exam, and I'm going to model how I selected my items for my proficiency exam. And then again, this is a 2-part TCM, so that's what we're going to be doing today. But then on next week, we're going to be taking that assessment and grading it while we're in our TCM. And the model will be how to grade that proficiency exam. So for the new learning, here are the things that I'm using to create my proficiency exam. I am using the assessment guide, the social studies assessment guide, the standards for my grade level. I'm using the proficiency exam guidance that has been provided by the district. I am using the pacing guide, and then I'm also using the Bayou Bridges curriculum. So the grade level that I'm using is 3rd grade that I'm using to create my proficiency exam. And so I'm using the proficiency exam guidance to help me create my proficiency exam. So I'm following the directions that are in the proficiency exam. I'm going to the library. I am going to test, and I'm scrolling down to collections. And I'm going to go to social studies Q2 exam that is under the 3 through 8 grade social studies. Each proficiency exam will mirror the assessment guidance from LDOE. And as I stated, I'm going to be using all of those as I'm choosing my items. The proficiency exams for social studies will have to have 20 questions, and I have to complete this in one setting. And in my creation of my proficiency exam, I have to make sure my items, in my items, I have technology enhanced items, I have 2-part items, I have constructive response items, and I have selected response items. So again, as I am choosing my 20 questions, I'm using the assessment guide to make sure that I am covering the standards that are actually in my assessment guide for my grade level. I'm also using the standards for my grade level to make sure that they are connecting to the assessment guide for my grade level. But I'm also using my pacing guide, which says everything that was covered from proficiency exam 1 to now my proficiency exam 2. And I'm using my curriculum to connect those, go into my curriculum to see those specific standards that are in that unit, because they are listed in that unit. And I'm making sure that those are the standards of the items that I'm choosing to put on my proficiency exam. Does everyone understand that so far of what I'm showing you? Yes. Okay. So, what I've decided in my item selection, again, I have to have selected response, technology enhanced, 2-part items, and constructive response. So, in looking at my assessment guide, I see the selected response are worth 1 point. So I kind of divided the amount of questions that I needed to make sure that I get to 20 questions, but I divided it through all of those sections. And I mainly gave the 2-point items more questions than I did my select response because it's 1 point. But we also know that in those multiple choice questions, they're also a part of your 2-part item anyway as well. So you're basically hitting in all ways, but you're kind of giving your students, I'm giving my students time to practice that throughout. And again, on the proficiency exam guidance, I have to have at least one constructed response item that is included in my exam. So, as I created my questions, here's one of the items that I chose to talk about with you today. So that's going to be on my proficiency exam. So I chose one that has a map attached to it, and then this question also shows all of the standards that are addressed in that specific item type. And as you can see, that I also put my standards here as well, because we all did condition of the standards at the beginning of the school year, and we took all of our standards and we broke them down, and we put all of that in our binder so we know what we need to do to meet the condition of each of our standards for our grade level. And you all bring that to TCM's weekly, so you have that information. But I'm showing you that I actually went through and used my standards to make sure that my standards are actually being addressed in the question that I chose to that condition of the standard. I also went through my assessment guide to make sure all of those standards, that are on that question are in my assessment guide, telling me that that's going to be tested on and addressed in the end of the year LEAP exam. But this also shows what reporting category each of those standards will be tested on, and the amount of percentage of tests that will be based on that specific group of standards. So I just want to make sure I'm keeping that in the back of my mind as well as I have chosen the item that I have chosen. Do you have any questions on that so far, so you all understand how I went through that specific question? And so I also chose my constructed response, because we know that's a part of our action plan that we have been working on from proficiency exam 1 to make sure that we are better on that for proficiency exam 2. So I also wanted to make sure that I've chosen one, not only chosen a constructed response, but I've connected it back to that multiple select item that I just chose as well, because that's one of the issues that our students have been having, connecting that to our constructed response. Because they can answer it if it's just a multiple choice, but when it comes to connecting that to the other area, they're not able to do that. So I put that in here as well, so that because we're tracking that, and we can use that data multiple ways, not just for our proficiency exam, but also because of how we've been tracking week to week in our TCMs. And again, I also put my standard here again to show that I read my standards and I see the condition of the standards and does it meet that constructed response item that I chose. I also put again where it is in my assessment guide to make sure I am addressing what's going to be tested on the LEAP exam. Any questions? Okay, so now I need for you all to start working on your proficiency exam. Mr. Stevenson, Ms. Fontenot, and myself are also going to be here helping and supporting you create your proficiency exam, because again, we're going to be taking this exam next week, and we're going to be scoring it to make sure everybody is on the same page with everything that we're doing. So we're going to be helping and supporting. So let's get started on creating your proficiency exam. And Ms. Wilcox, you want to be helping and working with Ms. Mills? Ms. Stevenson, can you please help Ms. Schindler? And Ms. Fontenot and I will just be walking around helping and assisting.
those substandards are breaking the standards down further. So when you say you test on 511, it says describe a geographic, political, economic, performance, structure, of the community, right, so that's 511. See the first part of that. Because it catches that, we didn't test it. So we haven't covered it.
Gotcha.
So there can be some questions on this. So 511, 513, the standards are, these are the conditions that they have to meet. So social studies really has it. Now, there's 1,000 of them, but for this proficiency exam, you're gonna be 511 AD, so you're gonna be 513 A to C. It does, it's chunked in these areas. It's, for this, you'll see chapters on this, and then it'll go to the next, and it'll be the Aztecs and Incas. This will be all the, I think this whole unit here is like South, matter of fact, it's broken in just like this. South, people of the Southeast is a chapter, people of the Plains is a chapter, people of the Northeast, and people of the Southwest. So it's broken down, and then you go down here to people of the West Coast, but we won't get into the people of the West Coast. I would just go here because proficiency window is here. You don't want to put people that are in there. But you see, it's still A and C. When it changes, you'll see you go to the next one, the Incas and Aztecs. See the Incas and Aztecs. So then you're going to the next part of that. Then you're going to the next parts of the standard. So see, then you'll get into the J. When it goes Aztecs. So what you need to do if you're making yours is we decided the standards, we decided the pacing. What you need to do now is look at the self-study.
Okay, so we're gonna start and, everyone ready to show, one of their, items that they have chosen. Ms. Shinnifer, let's start with you.
Okay, so I chose this particular item, is dealing with standard 513C, which describes the political structure of the indigenous civilizations in North America. I chose this item because the answers can't be directly taken from the excerpt. They have to also, think back to the content that we studied in class across the unit, and we have been working on making sure that they all are thinking back to all of the knowledge of the social studies lessons, not just trying to depend solely on the source itself.
Okay, Ms. Snow?
Okay, so, Ms. Wilcox and I thought we chose this one because, this is dealing with 4.6 and 4.7, where they're using geographical representations to describe places and geographic characteristics and explain how physical geography influenced the development of ancient civilizations. And then it hits that 4.15 because it's specifically, ancient India. And so they have to use the map to answer questions 1 and 2. And when we analyzed proficiency exam 1, they really struggled with maps. It was really bad. So we've been using maps for bell ringers to improve that skill. And so we chose this one though because it goes beyond just reading the map. So they're going to have to know how to read the map, but it also requires them to apply knowledge of the geographical structures and characteristics.
So one of the items I chose was, this item that requires them to use the image source to answer the question. Now this one is reflecting, standards 3.6 and 3.7, specifically from, in the assessment guide from reporting category 2. So, what I know third graders are really struggling with is if the source that they're given, whether it's an image, a map, an excerpt, doesn't explicitly give them the answer, they're really struggling to answer those questions. So in this one in particular, there is nothing about this question that tells them who that is in the image. And so they do have to know who it is, and because we've studied him across this unit, they have to know that as Chief Sitting Bull, and they have to know what he is known for, which requires them to not only use their knowledge of just who he is as an important historical figure, but connecting to the idea of westward expansion and that he resisted it. So it looks like a really simple item, but it's actually really complex.
Okay, so now you will implement your next step here of your action plan with your students, reflect on the impact it has on student achievement, and bring back your analyzed work samples for next CCM. So what you're gonna be bringing back for next CCM is your upcoming chapter assessment, because between now and our next CCM, you all be having your chapter assessment. So you're gonna be bringing that back, with you. And along with bringing that back with you, you're going to be, bringing back that constructive response item with you as well for us to focus on that's in that chapter assessment. So you're gonna be bringing back that analyzed data for us to look at and make decisions, but you're also gonna be bringing back that constructive response, because we wanna make sure that we're still moving in the right direction with our action plan that is currently, in place. And so I think you all made great choices so far in the items that you have chosen. And I know that you didn't completely get finished with your, item selection, but I know Thursday during our regular planning time that I have with each of you during your, planning time, we can finish the last couple of items that you need to add to that. So when we have our QCM next week, you're already finished with that, so we can just go right into, explaining why we've chosen all of those items that we have chosen, and go ahead and take our exam, so that we can talk about that, assessing and using our rubric to make sure that we're grading those, correctly.
So our regular planning meeting that we have on Thursdays with you, we're gonna be
Yes.
doing this, so.
Yes.
Can we take these items with
We're
us?
gonna have those Thursday when we meet back.
So
So we don't take them?
do I take this with me?
We're gonna have those Thursday when we meet again.
So I give them to you?
Yes. Thank you.